Boston, in Lincolnshire, has many claims to fame, but the most visible of these is the Boston Stump, the tower of the Church of St. Botolph. Some claim that the builders intended to crown the tower with a soaring spire, like so many other great churches in this part of the world. But when it was discovered that the foundations were not strong enough to support such a structure, they instead erected the much lighter lantern, which now crowns the tower and gives it the name of the Stump.
This is the tomb of Dame Margaret Tilney, and her claim to fame is not only that she was a good-looking lady, but also that she paid for and laid the first stone of the Boston Stump, the famous tower of Boston's church. This is St. Botolph's Church in Boston. In fact, the name Boston itself is an abbreviation of Botolph's town, Boston. St. Botolph was a missionary, a Celtic missionary of the 7th century, who first brought Christianity to this area, and there's been a house of worship on this site ever since then. There are a number of attractive things about this church, some of which I want to show you. We don't know who this man is, we don't know his name, but we do know what he was. He was a knight of St. John, one of the knights of Malta, as you can see by the Maltese cross hanging around his neck. Interestingly enough, the last prior of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem came from here, came from Boston. And so although this probably is not him, it serves as a reminder of that fact.
St. Botolph's has a number of misericords, those little supports hidden under the seats in the choir. My favourite is a wry commentary on the bagpipes. It shows two jesters holding cats in the approved bagpipe manner and chewing their tails. To Sassenach ears like mine, I don't suppose the ensuing noise was all that different to the infernal Scottish instrument.
I'd like you to have a look over here to where the pulpit stands. This pulpit was erected in 1612, in the very same year in which a young Puritan divine or preacher by the name of John Cotton was appointed to be the minister here. Boston was a Puritan town at that time, and the church itself had suffered a lot of damage when the soldiers of Cromwell came through and were quartered in this building. John Cotton preached fiery sermons that convinced his congregation that they needed to make a fresh start. And we can imagine this church ringing with the declamations of John Cotton as he exhorted his congregation to be faithful to God. Up here on the wall is a brass, that is a piece of brass which has been engraved, and on it is a picture of Thomas Law, an alderman and mayor of this town, and a member of Parliament during the time of Oliver Cromwell. He entertained Oliver Cromwell when Cromwell was passing through Boston, and this is his memorial. And above me is another brass, this time without a portrait on it, but it's to a Obadiah or Abadius Howe, vicar of Boston in 1660 to 1682. As a young curate, he had entertained Cromwell and other officers before one of Cromwell's battles, and in the spring of 1643, just after that battle, the Parliamentary army came here to Boston and went through the church like a plague of locusts, destroying everything of beauty. Sometimes we look down upon the Muslims because of their vandalism of ancient monuments, but I'm afraid the Puritans were just as bad in destroying things of beauty in this town and in other places as well. This monument, which stands directly beneath the stump, beneath that high tower in Boston Church, is to some of the men who discovered Australia. John Banks, for example, the naturalist who was with Cook in his expeditions. George Bass, after whom the Bass Strait between Australia and Tasmania is named. And Matthew Flinders, who circumnavigated Australia and explored much of it. These men are honored here because they were from this area. In fact, one of them, a man called John Franklin, his parents were actually married in this church. This is a rather interesting object. It's a model of the Mayflower, the ship on which the Pilgrim Fathers eventually did reach America. But it's made out of bronze or brass. It was made by a local firm and is here in the Church of St. Botolph in Boston as a memorial to those who sailed from here to found what many regard as America's premier city. A number of men from this area, a number of people from this area went out to America and founded the colony there. And some of the governors, 5 of the early governors of Boston and of Massachusetts, were directly from Boston. And this plaque up on the wall is a reminder of them, a memorial to them for the part that they played in bringing Boston to prosperity and in ensuring religious freedom for the colonies of America. This plaque reads, "In the year 1927, the people of Boston set themselves to remake the roof of this church. God prospered their labors. Thanks be to God." And it's nice to think that the roof of this church is a memorial to the continuing faith and worship of the people of Boston. The roof of this church, a splendid structure of painted wood, was built by the efforts of the local people, banding together to the glory of God because of their love for Him and their love for His house. If you come to visit Boston, make sure you visit the Church of St. Botolph's. It's well worth a visit.